Hey, what's up YouTube? This is um, kind of weird because I normally don't make videos about my art stuff at all, which kind of seems weird and counterintuitive because that's pretty much all I do. But today I figured randomly, I was shooting a YouTube video for Filter Grade about filmmaking, and then I realized I was in my living room and had all my art stuff around, so why not show a little bit of that process, because I didn't feel like going outside to film right now because it's a little bit too bright out. So in the meantime, I'm going to just show you a little bit about my process for making sewn tapestry like pieces similar to this one, except this is very minimalist for my work. So today I want to show you a little bit of my studio and how I sew together basically just trash and scrap fabrics to make different types of artworks. So I'm going to show you the studio, I'm going to show you the process, and then I'm going to show you the finished piece on these stretcher bars behind me. So I don't know if this is interesting or not, but it's more so a documentation for myself to look back on, because I like looking at my artwork from a scientific perspective and enjoy having notes and footage or records of how something was made. A lot of the times it's just a compilation of pictures or a string of pictures from beginning to end that I have to look back on, or I have just notes that I have written down about how I want a piece to look or something like that, which I can show you some of the notes as well. But for today's video, I'm just going to show you actually how it gets done from start to finish, just as a way to see if this is interesting or boring or whatever. But feel free to stick around and watch if you want to. It should be kind of cool. Alright, so right now I'm in my living room. That's where this piece is. Let's go into my studio, which is basically a trash pit and really hard to get into, but that's alright. Let's just go so I can show you what it looks like. Normally I paint in here. Sometimes I sew in here, sometimes I sew in the living room. Right now it is in full painter mode. As you can see, you can barely walk around in here. Here's a big painting that I've been working on, and then another one on this wall. A lot of the time I put a table up right there, and that's where I'll sew, over in that corner. But as you can see, obviously right now it's a bit of a mess. So I did, right before I moved everything around, I put a lot of my scrap fabric into this big trash bag, which that's what I'm going to be pulling from mostly today. I also have a little bit more over here, some up there. Those in that box are finished pieces, and then I might have, there's some more scrap fabric in these bags right here. That's just scrap paper. So yeah, basically, as you can see, and even me just explaining all this, it kind of makes me realize the majority of my materials that I use are scrap materials. Besides paint, paint I do actually buy. Oil paint I buy, fresh oil paint. A lot of these house paints I buy from Home Depot in what they call the Oops paint aisle or section. It's paint that people came for mixing specific colors, but they don't like the exact match, so it gets put on discount. This price may have gotten covered, but you can see these two cans right here. They have a little bit of a new price tag. I don't know if you can see that or not. So the gallons are usually about $10, which is very affordable. A lot of the times they'll be, anywhere from $25 to $50, even $100, depending on what exact color you get. So that is always super helpful. And then these smaller ones, like you can see, this one went for, wait, hold on, 50 cents. So That's not a bad deal at all, if you ask me. So I use these a lot for my paintings, but that's that's for another video. Let's go ahead and grab this bag of trash fabrics and make something with it. So usually when I start, I just start by pulling stuff out of the bag. Sometimes I just leave the bag right next to me and then I grab the first thing that's there. But recently I've been trying to be a little bit more strategic about what I make, or how I make it at least. So today let's go ahead and pick through some of this stuff and then start putting it together. Right now, these are kind of like full shirts or things that I'm pulling out, so I don't really want to use those. This could be cool. This looks like a half-finished piece. Let's not use that. This could be cool to use some like sheer plasticky material, and then the mesh mixed with some other canvas that I already had. Okay, let me give a better idea. So I have just like old grocery bags, old scraps, old t-shirts. I think this is old bed sheets, old towels. So yeah, the first step is always just kind of figuring out what I want to be using, what I want the end result to kind of look like. Right now, I don't have anything in mind other than kind of cleaning up some of my scraps. So ideally, the stretcher bars are 66 inches by 68, and I want to get rid of as much of this bullshit as I possibly can. So let's just start. Honestly, I'm not even going to go through this and just like talk about each piece. Let's just start sewing this shit together. So here's my sewing machine. Today I'm just going to use, maybe I'll switch colors eventually, but I'm going to just use regular like beige or bone colored thread. It's threaded right now. When I need to rethread it, I'll show you how I do that. But yeah, let's just get started. Usually at this stage, I don't exactly know what I'm going to be doing. It's just grabbing materials and going as is. I'll show you a lot of the sewing process. If I show you the whole thing, it might get a little boring, but let's just go ahead and start, for lack of better words, just clearing up some trash. A lot of the times when I'm sewing like these trash mud paintings or whatever you want to call them, or whatever I call them, I'm not really thinking about doing straight lines or anything like that. I'm just focusing on adhering two different pieces of fabric together. There's certain instances like on edge points where I try and make a clean seam and everything, but most of the time it's just like get the things together, almost like it was glued. Also, it's fine if not everything is like flat down right now. There's gonna be a lot of thread that gets added in, and pieces are gonna go over and under and whatnot. So like, it'll start coming together as I keep sewing. But I was just thinking about it. Part of the reason why I wanted to film this was because I think with Filter It, I filmed so many tutorials, like how to do something, and there's a specific right or wrong way to do it. The reason why I wanted to film this though is because I'm not trying to make it, I don't want to make a tutorial. I don't want to tell you how specifically to do it. There's no right or wrong way to do this. I just simply want to show you my process. And if you like the process, then obviously it's a tutorial and you can follow along and do it or whatever, but it's more so, like I said, it's just a record of how I was able to make something. It's not like you have to be following it. So for these, I mean, I'm gonna try and make somewhat of a straight seam, so I'll go, usually I fold good side facing the good side, and then sew them along the seam line. Honestly, I am going to switch thread because this thread is a little bit thick and it's pissing me off. So, let's switch this fucking thread out of here. Should I just use, I'll do different colors. No, that's good. Let's just do this. So, take out the other thread. This one's small enough I can fit it on my machine. Let's just thread this needle, and then we can really get cooking. Alright, let's thread the needle. Probably should use a smaller pair of scissors for all this shit, but that's fine too. Alright. Let's just go ahead and put this back up and pick up where we started. As you can see, I'm not the most gentle when it comes to sewing. I am a little bit more intentional and serious if I'm making clothing, but when I'm sewing these pieces together, just get them together. just put together a lot of this leftover canvas, honestly. I have so much of it. Alright, so I'm still just sewing together various pieces, but I'm trying to think about the overall height that I need to make the piece and keeping that in mind. So I'm not going too large or too small. I like working with just a simple like straight edge though for the top piece and the bottom, that way I can easily know where my edge points are and then I kind of work inwards. But these pieces are not long enough, so now I'm trying to build that out. But again, the goal in mind isn't necessarily to make something that looks interesting. That is part of the goal. One of the main goals is using like all these recycled materials and giving them new life, but also cleaning up. Like a lot of my practice I feel like is just cleaning up. I also need to get a new sewing machine because these home sewing machines don't have enough space. Like once this gets really big, you'll see it's just like I'm gonna have to roll it up just so that it can fit in here. That's why I try and work on a lot of small pieces first and then put them together. But I like having a lot of like big gestural marks that cover the whole length or width of the canvas, so I will do a little bit of that at the end. So right now I feel like I'm still just working on like the back, I guess the background. This could be like the edge point right here. And then as I build out the background like this, then I'll start adding things on top of it, especially lots of smaller pieces that I don't necessarily like. That's when like once I get a background, then I'll start planning composition and everything with the smaller little scrap pieces. So one problem, it's not really a problem, but one thing to mention with these pieces is like half the time I never even really know what they're gonna look like until they really start coming together. Which is also one of the reasons why I never really filmed this, because like most of the time people want to know what they're watching or what they're seeing or whatever. But it's just really difficult because it could always turn out differently, and also once I sew it, you know, I'm no expert at sewing, so it doesn't necessarily look exactly like how I put it and lay it out on the ground, which I mean, I'm personally fine with that, but it's just, it gets a bit confusing. And Alright, I just shot a bunch without having any audio in it, so that's great. This is the composition that I'm working on. Probably doesn't make any sense right now. I don't know if it's 1% done or if it's 50% done or where we're at, but I'm going to take a smoke break and I'm going to just sit and talk with you, because I would normally just take a smoke break anyways because I need a little bit of a break. But what I was saying before I realized the audio wasn't on was that I don't know, something about this feels very accessible. That's why I wanted to make a video about it, because it reminds me a lot of like just pencil and paper or pen and paper drawings, where like it's very limited tools, but me telling you my process for how to do something isn't going to be able to necessarily let you make like one of my pieces, because the fabrics is always going to be different, the actual mark making is always going to be different, and the sewing as well is going to be different. So the reason why I compare it to like pencil and paper drawing, or even I guess like you could compare it to baking, is because like this is just the recipe and I'm showing you what the ingredients are. It's not obviously the exact ingredients that you'll be able to find or whatever, but it's a recipe and it's a formula, the same way like, you know, there could be 30 people in a drawing class, but everybody's drawing looks different. You all have the same paper, you all have the same set of pencils, so why is somebody's different than the others? And rather than trying to make things that look cool or great or whatever, I like studying how one person can make something with the same tools and resources look so different than one another. I have some friends that, you know, they make similar artwork to this that are much more gentle. They're not just hacking away with their sewing machine, putting stuff together in a very rough composition like I am. I know some people that focus on round edges and they want perfect like curvature, or same thing even with straight edges. They want very straight lines. Everything needs to be folded on a seam line and whatnot. So I just think it's cool to study like maybe like the psychology behind why my pieces might look like this. I also think something to note is like the piece on the wall that, I don't know if you can see it now or not, but the one that I showed at the beginning, how it's so minimal and so simple, yet it's still something, versus like when I work on these pieces where I'm like really just cleaning up a lot of scrap fabric, how it can look so different but still have like the same feeling of or same energy of like, oh, that was the same artist. So I don't know, it's just interesting, and I'm tired of like in the art space people saying like something is better or worse. I don't think that's like not real. That doesn't make sense to me, because it is very subjective. I think with something like baking, yeah, you can really like taste the difference between good and bad, but I also think it's a preference thing. Some people like things really sweet, some people don't. Some people like really minimalist work, some people don't. So I try not to restrict myself in that manner. I'd rather just like make, because honestly for the past couple of weeks I've been making very like minimalist work, and maybe that's why I'm making this today. I'm making more of a scrappy piece because I just have so much leftover fabric. I'm not really sure, but it's something to to think about and to discuss and like observe. I'm hoping that this isn't like boring though, and it's easy to kind of like follow through. I don't want to film the whole entire thing because it'll be a lot of footage, and I think it will get boring at points. So I'm trying to show specific key points that make the whole entire thing kind of like line up and make it more tangible to like a viewer or a consumer, how the whole thing gets put together, and maybe for myself too, because I'm not 100% sure right now. I have so many scraps out, but I'm noticing that I'm going towards like this leftover canvas with a bunch of red paint on it, some like clean denim, and then some clean canvas. And I think if I add in, you know, a big huge piece of like blue medical cloth, or if I add a yellow t-shirt into it with like the scraps from it, how that's going to change the whole entire like energy of the work. Lately I've been really fascinated and like intrigued by like earth tones and things similar to it, even if it's not a straight earth tone. Like this is a pretty brightish red or a candy red, how it interacts with earth tones. But also I'm just going with what I have. Like I don't have that many like brown materials. I would love to have like more browns and blacks. Right now I have kind of like beiges and navy blues and some whites, but I like making the background out of something like stiff and rigid. That way when I stretch it, it's not stretching too much. I have some pieces that I like being stretchy like that, but for this, since it's kind of a scrappy piece, I'd rather have more rigid, stiff background and then add a lot of like softer, stretchier materials on top, just to get a cleaner stretch so you can get an idea of how it all comes together. Yeah. I'm gonna smoke the rest of this and then let's get back to it. Alright, now some of it's starting to come together a little more. I'm not sure which is top and which is side. I'm not sure where the composition is going to get placed, but you can see now a little bit more of it. This might be a side, this like denim panel. I don't know. We'll see. I'm just going to keep building it out. It's like a little bit more than halfway for the background. Maybe, well, with the stretch, because you need extra material to like actually stretch around the bars. Yeah, there's some, it's getting put together, but this is like a point where I like the chaos of what's going on, and I think having some flatness will make for an interesting composition because it's relatively clean. Gets dirty, I'll probably add more into this dirty area, and then like a clean composition at the bottom as well. But who knows? I don't have that much more canvas. besides a few, a few pieces here and there. So maybe we start making this a little bit more colorful, but I want to maintain the shape and like the rigid forms. See, right now I don't even know what I'm looking for. And a lot of this stuff is already like halfway sewn together and stuff, so it's sometimes can be like almost overwhelming. But I try not to think that way, I just try and like work on it. There's the black piece that I was looking for. So let's do something with that. Yeah, let's do something. My plan has changed a little bit now that it's starting to come together, and although I want to use a lot of my scrap materials, I also want to maintain the integrity of the color palette and the overall like piece that's getting put together now. I originally did not want to use some of the other canvas that I had because it's still a little bit wet from dyeing. You can see some part of the wetness here too. This one's even more wet. But I was originally going to use this canvas for a different project. But I like the way that this is kind of coming together. So this is where it gets a little bit tricky because I'm gonna try and put this piece under right here because I want to keep this shaped. But I also need to put it underneath so I can fill out like the actual shape of the stretcher bars. In the future, I think I want to start making pieces that aren't just like square or rectangle or sharp edges. I think it would be cool to have canvas stretcher bars that like end with certain rigid or rounded marks. But yeah, this is the really tricky part because I have to fit all of this and all of this underneath or inside of my sewing machine and put it together. I'll probably cut a good amount off afterwards, but it'll be something like this, I guess. This piece might get cut off. I don't know if I like this. Just something like this. And I need to sew here, 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 and then down, maybe across too. We'll see. It might be wide enough right now that that'll work, but and I usually like to start with this stitch first. That way if it's too high or low, this here and this here, I can kind of just pull and stretch it out so it's like tight and there's not some like, you know, bagginess behind it. I think that's fine if it is, but it's better if it's, you know, two flat pieces of fabric on each other. So this I'm going to put on the right side of the sewing machine, this on the left. Let's try and squeeze it in. That'd be good. Turned around backwards right now. I can't really. It's hard to picture it at this stage, honestly. It's really annoying, but I think that's what like motivates me to get it together, like all the pieces together, because I know once all the pieces are together, then I'm like, oh, I just figured out what it was gonna look like. I also don't like wasting canvas. Like obviously I can cut it out of the back and whatnot, but I try and size it up as perfectly as I can so that I don't have to worry about the aftercut. Let's just This should work. Sometimes it doesn't work. Let's just figure it out as we go. For things like this, really any part of these pieces, I try and sew the seam line at least 2 or 3 times because I know I'm going to be stretching it, so you don't want any like loose threads to just pull. And it's okay for some pieces to have holes in them and things like that, but for most of the pieces I make, unless that's part of the composition, I want to make it so that all the seam lines are, you know, tight. See, this is exactly why sewing like square edges. Square edges are so much easier because you know where everything is and whatnot. For stuff like this, it gets a little bit trickier. Let's take it out, look at it, and then reassess. And at this point, I still don't really know what the top or the side or the bottom is. We'll figure that out once it's stretched. So this is the line I just made here. Now, let's sew this piece down. Like here. We sew here and then we sew the bottom part too. And then it should be good. Yeah, I'm starting to like how it's coming together, so we'll see how many like little scraps I actually add to it. Because sometimes it can get a little bit messy, which that is a type of piece, but I don't know if that's what I'm going to make right now. Yeah, let's get this line sewn down. As soon as I set it down on the counter, I always fucking lose it. I need like a bigger table and a bigger sewing machine. That's essential, but this will work. Gets the job done. Here's the edge, here's the top edge. usually try and let it hang a little bit if it can. That way I can get a better idea of where exactly I need to be sewing. Because if not, sometimes you might sew too far one way, and then there's this like warpy tension that sometimes looks bad. At least I think so. I'm gonna sew the edge vertically just so it's tight as well. That's just a little stitch. Okay, I'm gonna do that other end seam piece, and then if I'll lay it flat, if everything looks pretty good, after that I will sew everything down again. Not everything, but those last couple of big seams that I did, just to make sure they're stuck. But I want to see what this looks like first. I might just have to lay this down again because I'm starting to lose the vision, the visual of what I was going for. I think it's somewhere along there, but so I have the piece that I'm sewing over on this side. I'm like holding it in my hand because I hate using pins and clips and shit like that. It pisses me off and hurts if you poke yourself. So I'm holding it, and then once I get this in position, I'm just gonna sew it down. Doesn't always stay though where I want it, which is why people use clips. Alright, let's see what this looks like. I know the paintings on the couch probably does not help you to see what's going on with this single piece, but get over it. So this, and that is what I just added onto it. I don't know, it's something I can't really tell yet what. I might need to add more on this side, or this is going to be the edge. We'll see. I don't know, the shape just got really weird. Also, the hard part is like sometimes you don't know what it is until it's stretched, but the problem with that is like once it's stretched, you can't keep sewing because it's on the bars unless you take it off the stretcher bars. But then your vision of what it actually is keeps on changing the whole time. That's why I try not to like over plan the composition and stuff, because it's hard to actually like with the sewing, with my sewing capabilities, it's hard to like adhere exactly to like, oh, there needs to be a straight line here. Like that shit gets tough. I think this looks decent. I'm gonna sew this, and this again, just so they're like on there. Cut off some excess, and then I'm gonna try and like hang it on the stretcher bar, not actually stretch it, just to like visualize it a little more. Then once I have that set up, then either add little bits and pieces here and there, or I'll stretch it and you can watch that as well. Just okay. Alright, I just tightened those seams, so now they're tight. Let's bring this here so you can see a little bit better. Let's see what the hell this looks like. Alright, so it's definitely big enough. Now the question is, do we shift it this way, so there's a lot of negative space here and here? Then you get rid of this. I don't really like this thing. The thing that I'm questioning now is if I should add more little details and specs, if I should leave the negative space negative, or what. I don't know, I kind of like it, and I think if I add more, it's really going to change it. Just sometimes I like to just put things up to it like this, just to look and see like, okay, what is like just one little hint of like color gonna do? Is it worth it? Is it not? I don't really think it is. For this one, I kind of want to, I think I'm gonna stretch this, take a lot of the excess fabric off afterwards, and then you'll get to see what the actual piece on the wall looks like. Yeah, let's do that. funny because we didn't use any of the materials that I like showed at the beginning, I guess besides canvas, but like there was that sheer material, that white material, and a few other things that just didn't attach. Also, let me know in the comments if this stretcher bar is beyond warped, because it does not look like an even square at all. Or not square, rectangle. It looks like it's diagonal, not just because it's hanging lopsided. This is also a tricky part with stretching, is just making sure the composition is like how you want it. So I usually stretch while it's on the ground like this, and then I put the bars on top of it. It helps if I know where the end or the edge points are, which right now I kind of do. And it will help once I take a lot of this excess fabric off too. Like right here, this is all excess. I don't need this right now. This whole strip might be a little bit of excess. And then some of this will be excess as well, but I'll cut that off at the end since it's an edge. I'd rather start big and then get small. And this is something that I would like to mention, is that this isn't like for final stretch, for like if I were to sell this or if I were to hang it on the wall, like for good. This stretcher bar, I kind of is like, I use it as my working stretcher bar just to visualize things and stuff. So there's like a couple pieces already stretched on there, just on top of each other. Because I'm not going to be painting over this again anyway, so it's not like anything will bleed through. It's just to visualize it, so I'm going to be stretching on top of that. And I think this way is 68 inches, this way is 66. I think I want it to be 68 inches this way, 66 this way, and it's hard, but you can kind of visualize what's happening here because of the reverse of whatever the fabric is underneath. So I think I'm just going to go for it, honestly. You could tell there's some bubbling in certain areas, but that's alright. Still gonna look cool. This is definitely where it gets tricky, because there's leftover fabric from other pieces in certain spots, and It gets ugly quick. For this, if you're unstretching, you'll probably want the staple remover tool. If you're stretching something really tight and even, then stretching pliers. Really, you can get away with just the staple gun. You don't need the other shit. You can always unstretch, restretch, cut other parts off, add more parts on. It's really like, I consider for me like stretching in this capacity is part of the work itself. So don't overthink it too much. I think the reason why I'm overthinking it right now is because I'm doing a video about it. Normally I kind of just go. More of the actual edge. Because it's not like for final show stretching, I'm not going too tight with it. Normally I would be using the pliers and going like super tight, but this is just for looking at and visualizing. The last side is usually where I pull the tightest. That's where I'm at right now, so. What the hell? Didn't see how we're looking. Still a lot of loose threads that I'll probably cut off. Put it on the wall and see how it looks. Something's telling me that's the top. See all the excess fabric on the bottom right? Here. Let's make this a little bit. Jesus. I don't know if the camera's lopsided or if the piece is lopsided. How's that look? Interesting. Okay. I actually don't mind that this little bit is still there. Okay, cool. So maybe use the scissors at the very end to get some of these things off. I think sometimes I like leaving the strings on, other times I realize if I take them off, the whole thing overall just looks a little bit like cleaner and more intentional, because I like having certain areas very clean, others very dirty, and I like it when you can tell what's what. You can see like right here, that's where this big sewing line was that I was talking about before. You can see these, how it bubbled up. That's more to do with the sewing than it was with the stretching. Which I think is fine. I kind of enjoy like looking at tension like that, but there's ways that that could have been done better. If I were to stretch this again for sewing, I would make that corner definitely tighter. And then there's a few other things, but for now, I'm happy with the way that it looks. Let's see. How does that look? I don't know. I'm not sure. That looks cool, actually.
This makes it look like there's like a form here, and then this is all background. I like that. I don't know, I think I'm gonna end it here. I think you saw the whole process, you got to see a little bit of the studio, and now you see the final piece. Who knows if I'll work on this more, who knows if it's done. I think I like this composition. The other one, where it was vertical, also looked kind of cool. Maybe if it was that way, or if this was the top. I don't really know, but I just wanted to sew this together and film it so that you could see it and I could have a record of it. So I'll probably make more of these. If you watched it until right now, follow me on Instagram. Jesus.